For this week's Facebook Live. Today I'm going to talk about a subject that's, well, it was very difficult for me to write because it's so close to home, and that is your mental health and parenting a child with a disability. I've talked about it before. I have disabled children. They're all adults now. But it's still having to write this blog. I procrastinated, I'd say, for about a week writing it because it just brought up so many memories of the past, and not all of them were good because it's tough. It is really tough. It's a tough it's tough to raise a child, but it's really tough then too when they have a disability. No matter what their disability is, whether it's mild or moderate or severe, it's tough. It is really tough across the board. Um, so in the past, I've written another blog, and it just gave, in general, some of the implications that can occur when families are faced with raising a disabled child. The financial and physical challenges as well as the emotional. But it was just in general. But this one I wanted to highlight a subject that it's not talked about enough. I mean, it's well researched, but the research just doesn't seem to be hitting the ground level, down in the cold face, as I call it, where I've spent many years around the people with disabilities community, the PWD community, working with parents. It just does not ever seem to hit the ground, the information. The supports are lacking in that sense for parents in terms of their mental health, and they need it. I mean, most parents need support. They need extra support around their mental health, but this is one area where it specifically shows that there's high stress levels and high, increased depression and anxiety. So really needs extra support. But I'm going to, I can go on a tangent here, and I think I went on a bit of a tangent in the blog. So I'm trying to avoid that this morning. Um, so what issues do parents face? What issues do parents in the PWD community face? Stress. Now, you could say, yes, that's pretty obvious because, you've got the added pressure of financial pressures, whether that's buying extra or costly equipment, or getting tutors in, and it's a lot of it's private, you're to pay for things privately, or the reduced income because one parent has to stop working, or battling for every single support that you need, even though there is very good legislation there, you still seem to be facing a battle, a constant battle of trying to get services for your child, even though they have rights and entitlements under the law. But no, and nobody tells you this. Um, there's also the added pressure of the lack of, as I said, the lack of support. But the lack of support can come even from your own extended family. Stigma, the lack of understanding in the community, that all adds up. That all adds up to the stress levels these parents are under, um, and adds to their own feelings of, being a failure, being guilty, feeling guilty, and things like that, which they shouldn't do. But it does add to somebody's stress. It does add up. Um, so it's not just about being the child's main caregiver, and main advocate, because you have to advocate for them constantly. And that's stressful enough. But then if you add on that lack of understanding, the stigma, the lack of support onto that, the stress levels go through the roof. It's not surprising the stress levels go through the roof, in fact. Um, Burnout is one we have to talk about. It's one that we don't want to talk about. As parents, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to acknowledge. Um, But it happens. It really does happen. That stress, the exhaustion, it is exhausting. It's mentally exhausting, not just physically exhausting. Constantly fighting those battles up against supports, looking after your child when you should be just focusing on looking after the child. Um, the burnout rate is high enough. Um, we need to be aware of that. We as parents need to be aware that this is a reality. It does happen, and that we can only do so much. There is only so much we can do. Um, there's an increased risk, as I've said, of depression and anxiety. And there's just one thing there I want to highlight as well. There is also a higher risk of depression and anxiety in teens and young adults in the disabled community. So that as parents, you may not realize that, but that is something that can happen. So that's important you're aware of it, and I think I've talked about it before. So do check that out. But for you, the stress, possibility of burnout, increased risk of, depression and anxiety. It is important that you reach out. It's important that you have, a positive support group around you, that you talk to people, that you talk to, if you need to, things are getting on top of you, that you have an outlet for it. Whether that's talking to your positive supporters or coming to talk to somebody like me, it is really vital that you do that. Um, and the other reason I say to you it's vital to talk to somebody like me, a therapist, is there are issues that you're going to face, not just, and emotions that you're going to face, not just at the start when you get the diagnosis, but as you go through the different stages and where your child is at, and what age you are at, and things like that. So you're going to need to talk that through with somebody. So you need to talk to somebody, you need to reach out. So what feelings and emotions come up for parents then in that case? Um, the first one I talk about is a feeling of being alone. Even if you are getting all the supports, you can still feel alone. You can also be very isolated. That's a huge one, being isolated. So reaching out is important, that you don't feel alone. You need to reach out. Now, again, talking to somebody like me is one way to go, but also you also need, in conjunction with that, even if you are reaching out to a therapist, you need to be reaching out to the national organization in your country, wherever you are, for your child's particular disability. Or if there's an umbrella group, an umbrella organization that deals with a few of them, then you reach out to it. Talk to other parents within that group. They're going to be a wealth of knowledge for you. I know I found that really helpful. I didn't feel so alone. I got more understanding of what was going on for my child. I got more information, and information is vital in this situation. It's empowering, and once you have that, it can help. It has a knock-on effect, not just on what you can get, what your support you can get, but also how you can handle it in terms of your own mental health and your emotional health. Um, so, having that positive support system around you, and I've talked about positive support systems and what they entail before, so I'm not going to go into it now, but you need that structure. You need it just as much as you're going to put a positive support structure around your child. You also need it. That's going to be vital for you as a parent. Guilt is going to be a huge one. Um, And it is a huge stumbling block, particularly initially when you get the diagnosis. You need to talk to somebody about this guilt, and I would suggest professionally talk to somebody about it. If there's any other, if nothing else, talk about the guilt. Go and talk to somebody about how you feel in terms of the guilt. Um, this one can get in your way if you do not get rid of it. And you're, of course, you're going to have guilt throughout. The guilty feelings are going to, but that initial block of guilt, if you do not get rid of it, if you do not come to terms with it, really is what I'm trying to say there, it will get in your way. It's going to tie up all the other emotions, and it can be quite toxic, but it will definitely get in your way. The second one, or the next one I want to talk about, is your anger. Yes, initially you'll get the diagnosis, you're going to feel angry because you're going to go through a grieving process. We have to acknowledge that as parents. We're going to grieve things out. Um, so you're going to have anger. The second one I'd say to you is you're going to have anger and frustration. It's so frustrating dealing with the different the structures, the teachers, the schools, the different departments, the hospitals, the different therapists. Can be so frustrating, and the battles can be hard fought and hard won at times. A lot of the time it can be like that. So you need an outlet for your anger in a constructive way. The last thing you want is your child to feel that anger, and it's the last thing you would want ever to happen there. But you're going to feel it, so you need to acknowledge it. Yes, I'm feeling angry, and to have an outlet for it. Again, talking to somebody, talking it through, talking to your positive support structure there is vital. You're going to feel helpless. That's another, and it'll come up from time to time as well. But initially, you're going to feel very helpless. You'll get a diagnosis, and you're going to feel it's one of the emotions you'll run through. You're going to feel very helpless. How can I help? I want to help my child. You're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel helpless. What can I do? I don't know anything about this. I remember feeling like I was thrown in the deep end of a swimming pool, and I didn't know how to swim. So again, this is where the information comes in. Reaching out to a national organisation related to your child's disability is vital. They have the information. They usually have parent liaison officers. They will have support, other parents, forums to talk on, online support groups. They'll have maybe even local support groups. You need to be talking to these people, because in that way it's going to help you, as I said, not feel so alone, but also help you start to construct a plan of action for yourself and how you can help your child. It doesn't always seem to be forthcoming, unfortunately, from the professionals in how you and what you can do. So that can tends to add to our feelings of helplessness. Um, Jealousy, we have to talk about it. This is another one we don't want to talk about. You will feel jealous, and you have to acknowledge that. And it's a very important that you do acknowledge it, because if you don't, it'll fester, the guilt and the shame, and it becomes toxic. You're going to have the, if onlys, what ifs. You're going to see situations where perhaps your child is going to miss out on something that another child will get in their lifetime. It's jealousy, we don't talk about it, but it can be part of that grieving process. And it'll raise its ugly head at different times again as your child ages, as you age. Um, it is one we just don't want to talk about, but we do have it. We do get jealous. Yes, it is something we get jealous about. Um, you know, Particularly if we're feeling other high level emotions, raw emotions, anger, the loneliness, the helplessness, the frustrations, the fears, all of those are going to feed into our jealousy as well. So we need to express that, and we need an outlet to express that, an appropriate outlet to express that. As I said, we don't want to let it fester. Fear, you're going to have huge fears. You'll have the initial fear. Again, it'll tie in with the helplessness that I just spoke about. But, fears, there's going to be loads of them. You're going to have fear over making the right decision. You're going to have fears over, fear of the future, what's going to happen. The fear will change and adjust as the child gets older, different stages the child reaches. Your age is going to come into this as well, depending on your child's disability. What will happen to them when? There's a couple of things, again, you can do here. One is, yes, reach out to the PWD community. Talk to the parents that are already been there. They'll have all been through these emotions. They'll have all faced those fears that you're having right now. Reaching out again to that positive support structure, I said that's very vital for you to put it in. Perhaps even getting, in some cases, advice, professional advice. You may need legal advice. There are things you're going to need to talk to, people you'll need to talk to, professionals you'll need to talk to. This then can give you a sense of, well, what can I do? Because the fear is going to feed into your helplessness. So what can I do? You can start then putting in a plan of action that's a bit more constructive. You're going to feel like you can take control here, a little bit back of the control that you feel you've lost here with the fear. So you can plan for what you can do or maybe can control, rather than flying all over the place, but and giving in to the fears. You can be constructive about it. But also remember, I know I've just talked about a lot of stuff here, a lot of maybe negative things here. It isn't all negative, guys. It never is. You know, as I can tell you, as I've been a mum now for many decades, and um, it we gain so much. There is positives. There's always lights, and when you have those moments of lightness, moments, days where things are going well, there's a plan in place, things are working out okay. It seems okay. The future seems okay. It does feel, and it does get better. I can tell you that now. It does get better. It is better the more you reach out. The more experience you get helps as well, because you've dealt with one organization. You're going to be better at it dealing with a different organization when you have to go up against them. So it isn't all negative. We do gain so much from having these children in our lives. Um, there's a lot more information as always in the blog. But if you do need to talk to somebody, if you do need to reach out, you can work with me. I do run a support group for mums, that's free. But there's also a link in the blog where you can make an appointment if you want to do one to one. So I will leave it there. And as always, thank you for tuning in and watching. For those that watch it live, and for those that watch it in replay. And as always, faithful supporter, Deirdre's here again. Good morning, Deirdre. Yes, I'm hoping for good weather, dry weather in Wexford here. So I will talk to you all again next Saturday morning. I know it's a bank holiday, but I'll be here anyway. Take care, stay safe, and if you need help, please reach out. Reach out and talk. Talk to somebody that's positive for you. Positive. That's what we need. Negative vampires, no, thank you. You don't have time for those type of people right now in your life. Positive support structure is what you need around you just as much as the child does. So think on those terms for yourself. So good morning, um and I will talk to you all next week. Thank you for listening, and have a good weekend.